Welcome everyone to the Learn Tourism Talks webinar, previously known as the Digital Drop-ins. I'm so glad to have you all here. First, I just want to start by covering a few housekeeping things. One, I will be sending out before we are all gone for the holiday, a copy of the recording and the little slide deck that I'm going to share. Two, today I am going to share some slides of things I wanted to highlight, but then I think most of the conversation we're going to take a break and just talk like this, right? So I want everyone to think about what questions they have. You have the Q&A available. You can feel free to pop them in there so I can easily see them, but I'll also be monitoring the chat. So feel free to drop your questions into the chat as well. And like I said, I've left a lot of time today for us to have some discussions about what's working, what's not, what are we seeing happen in our own worlds. So even though this is a webinar, I want to encourage you to use the chat today to have a conversation. And the last thing I want to say just about this topic of social media and AI, whatever we're talking about today, it's going to be different tomorrow. Right now, I think there's lots of tools and adaptations to the tools and new features to the tools that are coming out. And the truth is, just like it's always been true in social media, we never know what's going to stick because we have to have behavior to make something stick the long term, right? So we have to have people adopting the different tools, people enjoying those tools, people seeing value in those tools if they're going to stick around. So, of course, if you've been in social media like I have for anything over maybe a couple of years, you've learned already that social media is adapting to how we actually embrace the technology and how the public embraces the technology. So whether it's front end, and we're talking about how people are engaging with us from a client, customer, visitor perspective, or we're talking about the back end, which is the tools we use as creators or businesses and things like that. All of these things are adjusting based on how they're being received. And a lot of the newer tools with AI are what we call beta. So sometimes you'll see they're not quite perfect. So you become part of testing those tools and helping them learn how to improve those tools. So we just have to have a lot of patience and we have to have a lot of curiosity and we have to be prepared for things to change every day. And again, that has always been true in social media, but I feel like the speed at which we're having to do that is much faster. So again, if you just joined, there's still a poll running. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Feel free to complete that, but we're going to dive into our subject for today. And again, the Q&A is open and the chat will be open for any questions that you have. And I can see the Q&A is already starting to have some things in there. So just so you know, if you're posting in there, we will get to that very quickly. I'm just going to get us through a portion of stuff and then we'll stop and talk about these things. So again, I put together a little presentation and hopefully everyone can see this, but a little presentation just about some of the main things I thought were highlights of what I've been studying over the last couple months. And for those of you who are new to our webinar series, this is the Learn Tourism Talks webinar series. We do this every month, sometimes twice a month when I have time. It was formerly known as the Digital Drop-ins, and this is an extension of our Learn Tourism conference work. So we do education all throughout the year. We have a great conference in Richmond, and our free webinars are a part of how we really want to stay connected with the community throughout the year. And if you don't know me, I'm Sarah Benoit. I'm really grateful everyone's taking some time out of their holiday week to join me. I am a social media SEO nerd. I've been doing it for almost 25 years. I started in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, 2003, exploring these different things back in the day before Facebook and all of that. I was on Dig, Delicious, and Stumble Upon, some of those real old school social platforms. So this is one of my passions. I love connecting with people. I am an information junkie in a lot of ways. So social media is something I've been involved with for a long time. It's also a double-edged sword in the sense that as much as I love it and I use it regularly and I see huge value there, I also understand a lot of the ethical questions. And I myself have a terrible addiction to my phone. So social media and I have had an ever-evolving relationship, both personally and professionally. So that's why I love talking about this, especially at the end of the year. Kind of what's the state of social media? What are some of the key things that we're seeing that are kind of going to be part of how we have to adjust our approaches and our mindsets and things like that as we go into the future? So I've been talking about this for years because it's been happening over time. Social media and search engines are the same thing. To me, as soon as we put AI into the algorithms of all of these tools, then social media started to behave a little bit more like the traditional Google search engine, Microsoft Bing search engines, things like that, right? Because all of a sudden, we see that these tools are tracking our behavior and they're bringing us things that they think we're interested in. This has been an ongoing process, I would say, for the last 15 years, and we are really hitting like the critical point of this just being true. I think in the next year to 2 years, we're going to see there's no differentiation anymore between search engines and social media. I think we're going to just find that whatever platform people love the most, or whatever platforms, if they have more than one, is going to be where they are engaging with the internet, asking questions, getting the information they need, whether that's about products or services, or whether it's just about concerts that are happening in town or new types of movies that are out or whatever it is. I think we're going to see this age of social media and search engines really becoming one with AI as the center technology that's powering it. We're really like reaching this thing that I feel we've been looking at for definitely the last 10 to 15 years pretty strongly. So, this is going to be about how you get discovered. It's not going to just be about how people search for things online. It's going to be how are they going through the online world and discovering what it is that they need or want, and sometimes discovering things that they weren't even looking for, right? So, I think it's going to be interesting to watch a lot of these silos we've had in the past disappear in the coming years. I also think when it comes to anybody who's in millennial generation or below, this merge that we've seen of social media and SEO or search engines has really been driven by these younger generations because they are growing up at some level, whether it was a little bit into their adulthood or in their teen years or from the time they started going to school. They have now been engaging with these types of algorithms and AI tech where being able to discover things can happen again on whichever platform you're most excited to engage with, or where your friends really are, where your community locally really is. So we're seeing, especially in the under 45 markets, TikTok and Instagram are driving significant behavioral changes and really starting to shine, right? As far as driving things like conversions, leads, sales, and things like that. So I think we really want to be aware with anybody. It's not even just like young people, right? It's if you're under 45, then you've been growing up with this tech in a different way and you don't have as much of a separation between the different tools. The tools have always been merging most of the time you've been using them, and you will continue to see them merge. And those younger markets are ready for that merger, right? They're already living in that space. The other thing that I'm really digging, nerding out on, let's say, is the idea that SEO has changed. I've done a few webinars on that this year. How we're approaching search is really evolving. And I think what we're going to find is SEO is no longer about search engines or Google. It's really about searching everywhere. So Neil Patel has been coining, I don't know if he started it, but it's where I saw it first, coining the phrase search everywhere optimization. And this is something I've been talking about in all my classes and how important it is now to really amplify your holistic perspective of your online presence. Again, this is old news. We've always been talking about this. You have to think of everything that you're building online as connected and working together, not separate little silos of things. If you want to really take things to that next level, that is becoming super amplified as AI overtakes all the other platforms and becomes a central thing that links them together, right? So people are searching everywhere. They're talking to their friends, they're talking to their colleagues, they're reading reviews, they're doing all these different things. So your ecosystem, no matter where they do that, it needs to keep them connected in to your brand, to what you want them to do. And there's going to be, I think, we're going to keep a lot of the old ways that we've optimized, especially when it comes to content strategy. The difference is we're going to be thinking about how we take action on those things slightly differently. So it's like the core principles of a lot of what makes a great website, great social media, great content, what really engages people, those core things are not changing. It's just really understanding how the technology is interconnected and keeping up with the changes in the tech, because the tech sort of updates are integrating things more and more and more and bringing it together, right? So just really understanding we don't just need to optimize our website, right? We need to really optimize all the different channels that we have as much as possible. So really quick, I want to go over some algorithm updates, because the algorithm updates, although they are a little bit, they move fast. It's hard to track them. I don't expect everybody to track all of these. There's some key things I wanted to highlight, because I do think the direction of the algorithm sort of tells us how is the technology evolving. So I highlighted three different things today: the meta algorithm updates, so Facebook and Instagram, TikTok and LinkedIn. Of course, you could do some research to find out about any of the other platforms that are out there. But I think there's some key things to think about when you're thinking, when you're strategizing around how do I optimize for the Facebook algorithm or the Instagram algorithm, right? Or the TikTok algorithm. Really thinking again about what is unique in their algorithm that's changing. How can I make sure that the steps I'm taking to build my content and the steps I'm taking to post my content really are lined up with that? So there's some things going into 2026 that I think are going to stick around and you can pay attention to. So Facebook and Instagram world, you probably have noticed, a lot of us have, that there's a lot more content coming from outside of your network, right? So essentially, you're seeing more and more in your meta feeds of people that you don't know, suggested reels, suggested posts, right? Tons of ads, which we all know. But even in the organic world, we're seeing this sort of shift, right? And this ebbs and flows. Basically, Meta's always been an argument about whether or not we should see the people we know or we should see recommended stuff. So it's that balance is always changing, and how we respond to it affects the balance that they're keeping, right? But this is where I just think right now, going into the new year and over the holidays, you do have an opportunity to maybe be seen by new folks, right? If you can create some cool stuff that is just grabs attention. We'll talk about how to do that in just a minute. AI powered recommendations. So if you have not used Meta AI recently, I highly suggest doing that. We'll take a look at that as well once we're done with the slides. Meta AI is really integrated into Facebook and Instagram now. So if you've been watching the search bar on Meta, it's getting more and more advanced. It's getting more and more of a chatbot style. It's getting more and more interactive. I think eventually we're going to be talking to it quite a bit, not even typing things in. And so our Meta products are going to have this kind of concierge that we hang out with that helps us find different things. That concierge AI is also going to be tracking us behaviors and then targeting us both organically and with ads. That's going to happen to all of the people that we serve as well. So just realizing that's why we have to start optimizing in a way for the meta AI inside of the meta social networks. If you have creator accounts, right, integrating AI is really going wild back there. So there's a lot of tools that I think are going to come out over the next 6 months. And a lot of them have to do with hyping up content production. I think we'll also see this on business pages, although the tools are not being they're not being released as quickly as they are for creators, right? So we're seeing this in the YouTube world as well. But whatever creators are getting, I think business pages will eventually get, although there may be a slightly different timing pace to what they're launching. And then if you're on Meta AI, there's actually a new feed called Vibes. And again, we're going to look at this in just a second, where it's actually just a feed of AI generated video. And so if you want to go see what people are doing out there and where Meta is envisioning its own tools, you can do that. Now, with TikTok, right, one of the most exciting things I've seen is with their search. They've really improved it with adding more AI functionality in the back end. So everything about your TikTok videos is now being indexed, right? Captions, text on the screen, hashtags, spoken words, right? And they are launching some new insights related to this stuff into the dashboard. So if you have a TikTok business account, I think we're going to see some really cool tools coming out there. But just know that every part of your TikTok video matters, right? So really having strategy through the entirety of the piece of content is valuable. Also, TikTok is one of the first platforms I see really taking a public facing push against deepfakes. So they're testing right now. It's not available to everybody, but how can you watermark things, right? So that we really know what is AI generated or manipulated versus not. So I appreciate that they're taking that initiative. User control over AI content. Again, inside of TikTok, I don't know if they've released it to everyone yet, but you are going to be able to tell the system how much AI content you want to see. So if you don't want to see any, you might be able to turn it all the way off, right? Again, something super unique that TikTok is working on right now. And then sophisticated trend analysis. So again, I expect this to show up in their insights if you're doing a business account or a creator account. Over time, I'm really hoping AI will just allow us to see a lot more detail while also protecting the privacy and security of people, right? So keeping their personally identifiable information out of the data, but including the behavioral data so we can really understand trends in a bigger way. I think it's been really cool. So these are unique things I think TikTok is doing that is going to make them stand out from the crowd. And then LinkedIn, which if you're B2B, you're probably involved in LinkedIn. I'm a huge LinkedIn user. They've been doing a few different things that I think are really in line with their goals and their mission from a B2B perspective. So, really prioritizing content based on user interest and engagement rather than just who you're connected to. So, this for them is a newer leap in their algorithm. They've always had some level of interest based content recommended, but a lot of what they were initially building was focused on sort of your connection. And so we're seeing the algorithm open up there. So again, an opportunity in LinkedIn to maybe be seen by people that are not already connected somehow into your network. Increased placement of suggested and sponsored content. The whole for you kind of page or trend that we see happening on Instagram, happening on TikTok, that has made its way into the LinkedIn world, right? So having different pieces of organic content and sponsored content where the system is really tracking your behavior, trying to understand what's going to be useful to you or what's going to get you excited and engaged. We're going to see more of that coming out across the algorithm. And again, they'll ebb and flow depending on how well it's received. Optimizing for engagement and speed. So, this is a unique thing around LinkedIn where they love to make sure they're featuring any viral content or fast paced content that's getting a lot of attention. But there's so much thought leadership there, the algorithm has to be balanced with more in-depth content as well, right? So again, we're just going to see LinkedIn continuously working on balancing their algorithm. And that's why on LinkedIn, it's going to be a good idea to think about how you can create longer form in-depth content and then maybe turn that into shorter clips that might get shared more frequently or would get picked up and engaged with more quickly. So really having that vision of long form becoming short form and maximizing that as much as you can. And of course, if you're using AI to create your social media, how can you make sure that you're making your process just faster, stronger, better, right? So that you can actually make content more quickly and go from that sort of bigger picture, deeper dives into these kind of quotables or really cool little nuggets of wisdom, right? And then managing criticism for significantly decreasing the visibility of certain groups. So, again, as a woman, I'm not surprised sometimes when there is bias built into the system. LinkedIn has been called out about this, right? That when it comes to business, their algorithm doesn't elevate as many women as it does men. I think this, again, this isn't just like an anecdotal claim. This is something people have shown with data. And so essentially, they're going to be adjusting the algorithm, I think, to make sure that they're addressing some of those biases, which I think is really important. So, some of the positives that are coming out of this is actually happening in a few different places when it comes to just AI tools in general. So, when we're talking about ChatGPT, Copilot, Meta AI, it's also starting to happen inside the Instagram algorithm. But essentially, what we're seeing is that sometimes the content that shows up at the top now is content that hasn't shown up at the top before. And it's content that is sometimes much more specifically geared to answering an intentional question or speaking to an intentional problem, really engaging a specific audience around something they really need. So we're seeing smaller brands, smaller organizations, or like I said, just brands that haven't always ranked high. It's like there's this window of opportunity happening for everyone. Instagram is where we're seeing it just on the social level, and some people have been documenting it. So again, here's an opportunity as you're going into the new year, right? Think about how you can make really authentic Instagram content, speak really directly to people. And we're going to talk about video and the importance of that, but video is a big trend. So continuing to refine how you're approaching video will be key. Facebook and other platforms are using AI to personalize feeds and surface more suggested content. So here's the interesting thing. Users have always said we want more content from the people we love. We don't necessarily want ads and content from random strangers and things like that. So a lot of times our feelings about it are that we don't want that stuff. However, as the algorithms have delivered things to us, we end up saying yes to them because our brains are being manipulated by the system. So that's why it's hard to resist a cat video, right? It's hard for me to resist a video of my niece if my sister posts something. So the system learns that about me and then it wants me to engage. So it's going to try to push those things to me, whether they're personal or they're from other places. It's going to figure out how to hook me, right? Again, inside when I'm thinking rationally, I say to myself, I don't like that as a user. But then when I'm actually using the platform, I fall for it anyway, and I create the behavior. So I think one of the things that we are realizing with AI is we could continue to put advertising and sort of new content, right? Content that is for you, that is from somewhere you're not familiar with, that you're discovering. We could potentially do a better job of presenting that content to people, right? So we're not cluttering people's feeds with ads they don't like, with content that's not that interesting or things that they feel are just distracting to them. But we could actually use the AI to source and understand the person in a better way. Again, we still want to protect user privacy and security in this process. But I do think that if we did it right, the algorithms could be so much more pleasurable to all of us and maybe less manipulative if we use the AI to really, if we trained it correctly. And then audiences really are craving useful human content. We want fast answers, but we also want real stories and we want to be able to connect, right? So this is where, even though the AI is taking over, and there's lots of AI content and things are just exploding in a certain way, what we're finding is it's creating more of a need for the human element, right? It's creating more of a need for that. So that's where I just think it's important to realize that as we're working on all this stuff, we're not driving the human element away from all this. So I'm going to stop really quick and just answer this one question, and then we're going to dive into specific trends, and we're going to talk a little bit about the poll as well. But Lisha, I see your comment or your question in here. You're currently experiencing an issue with Facebook. Your account is still linked to your previous organization, was just preventing you from running any boosted posts for your new organization. Any guidance on how to resolve this would be greatly appreciated. So I just wanted to say that is unfortunately something I've run into numerous times. It's not an easy thing for me to answer because we would actually have to meet and go over how things are set up in the back end. But I will say what you're experiencing is not uncommon. It means that somehow in the process of building everything, the right assets weren't linked to each other. And that can sometimes disable your ability to advertise. So you can reach out to me at Sarah, SARAH, at learntourism.org. And you can send that to me and we can maybe try to talk about that, grab a Zoom coffee, look over some things. I'm glad to at least try to point you in the right direction. But I will just warn you, that situation is hard to deal with. Sometimes I'm able to work it out, sometimes I'm not. And it depends on where the disconnect has happened in the back end. This is what I call the many layers of meta, and it causes lots of people different problems. So I'm so sorry that you're going through that because it's really not uncommon and very hard to navigate by yourself. So just let me know, email me. I'll be in the office tomorrow morning as well. So hit me up and I'm glad to see if we can set a time just to grab like a 30-minute coffee. All right. So back to the poll really quick. I just want to say, what is your biggest social media challenge this year? Engagement was at the top. 72% of you said engagement. I'd love for you to hop in the chat and let me know, when it comes to engagement, is there anything specific that you're talking about? Is it Instagram engagement? Is it Facebook engagement? Is it that your reels used to do well, they're not doing well now? If you have anything you want to throw into the chat about that, please do. I'd love to hear a little more and talk a little bit more. Next to engagement is reach. 44% of you said reach was a challenge. 33% said conversion to leads and sales. And then below that, 28% said content. But it feels like the other things, budgeting, ads, staffing and vendors, the tech itself, everybody's feeling empowered around the tools themselves. And most of you feel empowered about your content strategy, which is great. So it's really how do we get the people to do what we need them to do? And Thomas, yeah, you're saying Instagram's constantly changing their Reels algorithm and it's exhausting. 100%. I do want to say, though, it's not necessarily IG that changes the algorithm. It's our behavior that changes it. So there's a chicken and the egg conversation to have there, only because I don't think it's just the Instagram engineers are like, oh, we're going to make this random change and see what happens. It's actually how the bulk of the public is reacting to Reels. And we have had many studies showing that how we react to Reels changes over time. Sometimes the public is really excited by them. Sometimes we go through periods where we're exhausted by them. A good example I'll use just from Western North Carolina as a region is I think if you studied our region, you would see that there was huge fatigue starting last fall, going through the entire winter into the spring around reels in our region. That's because we had a natural disaster. And I'll tell you, most of us who live in this area, a lot of us had to turn, we had to go away, right, from that content. That wasn't necessarily because of anything that was wrong about the content, as much as the topic area, the issues happening were really stressful. And so there's only so much of that you can process before you have to tell yourself to turn it off. And I think we've seen across the globe this year lots of different issues that have come up where when those issues dominate, it can affect how we're engaging with different pieces of video content because we're already on an overwhelm. So that's a bigger conversation to have, but I just wanted to throw out to, even though the algorithm changes are annoying, the algorithm changes are often a response to the behaviors of people. So we're not going to see that change, right? It's almost like we have to be aware of those bigger topics. And Molly, I see your reels were doing great for a while and they seem to drop off really fast, even though your quality had actually improved. And you definitely agree about the Western North Carolina thing that I said, thank you. I feel grateful that another local can tell me that I'm not crazy, we really did experience that. And so reels, again, I just want to say there's ebbs and flows with reels. There's a few different things you can do. One is I would consider just what time of day you're posting them, switch it up. I've been doing that all year long. Whenever I feel like something is just not landing anymore, I've really switched up when we're doing it. So sometimes posting outside of my normal hours just to see what happens. Sometimes just changing the days, like whatever it is. But again, not doing it every single day, but saying for 2 weeks, I'm going to post in the morning instead and see what happens. Or for even with email and social media, I've done some things in the later evening over the last 3 months, which have been pretty well received. That normally wouldn't have happened, but I did it for, 3 weeks just to see when we get more engagement and we saw an uptick. So things like that I think can be useful, especially if you know that the content itself is strong. So that's when we have to get to, okay, so maybe it's when we're presenting it to people. Or once we've tested some changes in times and posting, maybe I will think about how I'm adjusting the post content. Is it clear? Is it specific? Things like that. Yeah, awesome. I'm glad that's helpful for both of you because I think there is some experimentation we have to do. I'm a big believer in what they call rapid prototype thinking with social media. That means we don't try to make it perfect before we get it out there. We make a great piece of content and then we push it out into the world. We see what happens. And if we don't get the results we want, maybe we push it out again. And maybe we push it out again. So, to me, if you've been in the social media game for any amount of time, you have some idea of what your audience wants and what kind of quality you have to present. So a lot of it comes down to how are we meeting them where they are? And we might have to change our strategy a little bit to do that. All right, so on to the next question I just wanted to mention in our poll is how often are you using AI to help you with social media? So most people, let's see, about 42% are using it almost every day or every day. And then we've got 11% that are using it weekly. We got a few people, about, oh my gosh, over 50%, only occasionally or not at all. So this is interesting because, again, AI is already integrated into the social media platforms. So really what we're talking about is, are you using it in any other way? And what I find fascinating is those of us who had successful content strategies, we were actually slower to integrate new AI stuff because if you're on brand and your content looks great, again, and you're already getting some level of results, you don't want to just throw AI content in the mix and you throw a wrench into anything, right? You want to figure out how you merge those other AI tools to solve problems with your content strategy, right? So if there's places where you need to be faster, is there a way you can make that workflow easier? And Thomas, I see your question. To the people who aren't using it on larger teams, so again, if you're not using it or only occasionally using it, AI, and I'm talking ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, Meta AI, if you're touching any of those tools to help you with social media or content. If you're not doing it, are you like a small business owner? Do you work on your own or are you part of a larger team? I definitely think that more and more brands are making policies about this. So you will find whether it's a small business or a large corporation, some of them are just saying we're not going to use AI at this time because we feel like it doesn't meet our security and privacy standards, or we feel like we can't align ourselves with certain things, especially with tools. That's like a big difference between OpenAI's ChatGPT and Microsoft having Copilot. A lot of larger companies that want a certain level of security, they're already on Microsoft Teams. They've opted into the Copilot experience because Microsoft is making a lot more promises about data protection and how things are being trained and stuff like that, where OpenAI has a little more flexibility there. And we're seeing teams now really start to decide where are we implementing, how are we implementing, and then really wanting to be comfortable telling their own customers or clients, this is how we use AI in there. Yeah, and Leah, I see your comment. You're on a team of two and you're not using it very often, but your coworker is primarily the social media person, and you've seen AI not be very well received. So yeah, we're going to talk about that. We talk about these trends, which I think are really interesting because it is being received and it's not being received. So when people say to you, if you're not using it, you're going to get left behind, I'm just going to argue, I'm not sure that's where we should approach it right now. I think all opinions should be welcome about AI and that we're actually having a cultural conversation and a business conversation about what these things mean, how they should be used, what our concerns are. So everybody's pace and everybody's questions and everybody's thoughts about it, in my opinion, are welcome. And we should all just engage in the conversation. It's not about being right or wrong, right? It's about making sure that we figure out how all of this is working to support, uplift, and benefit people in the long run. And so I will say too, just looking at the final question, lots of folks said that they were feeling good about social media, right? It keeps you connected. It's a powerful tool for generating business. It's building relationships, right, with your customers. It's important for customer service, especially, right? It's a key to the success of your brand. But then a lot of us also said it's a necessary evil. It's not producing the results it used to, like reels. And so those are always going to be things that we're trying to balance in this world. And then Thomas, I see you're primarily using AI for captions, right? And things like that. And you're managing 5 different social platforms with different audiences. And you really have to have that AI sort of support to start lessening your workload. 100%. And that's where I think all opinions here should be allowed, because I think we have to figure out how we can utilize this to help folks have a better relationship to technology and help us do jobs that are actually less taxing, where we can spend more time on the creativity and the relationships and less time on just the grind. And I do think there's a way to do that over time, right? And that leaves out, I will say, a bunch of ethical AI discussions we could have. There's lots to be had there. So I don't want to take away from that. But again, that's why I think everybody's voice needs to be heard. We all need to be thinking about how we feel and providing feedback whenever we can to different companies and tech leaders and politicians and things like that. So let's run through some really cool trends. And Thomas, yeah, you're saying it did take months to train it to not be so questionable. I just want to say to everyone, if you've seen some of my other webinars, I like to refer sometimes to AI as the tripping hippie. I definitely believe in my heart that quality control is part of all of our jobs. And yeah, we don't always get the payoff of the AI right away. We have to learn and we really have to like work at it, but that's what we should be doing. We should be taking our expertise and knowledge and skill and training and teaching the AI who it needs to be for us, who it needs to be for our customers. I don't want whatever engineer just built that AI to be the one telling it who it needs to be in my life and in my customers' lives, what role it needs to play in my business. I want to take the leadership on that. And it's important because if we don't tell it, it'll just be hallucinating and making up whatever it wants. But yeah, so let's talk about some of the actual actionable trends here that we can take away from what I'm talking about today. So, one is, like I said, search first social, right? Search engines, social media, there's really not a difference. Doesn't matter if it's Google or TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or Pinterest or LinkedIn. These things are merging. They're going to become places where people gather. It's going to be places where they discover different things about people they already know, about people they don't know, about brands and companies they know, and brands and companies they don't. So we're going to see the AI taking a bigger role there. And I also think it's going to get very concierge focused. I really predict that pretty quickly, although I'm holding out right now, pretty quickly, especially those under 45 people, they're going to be talking to their social media. And in that process, they're going to be talking to a bot that then does a lot of the work for them. They're not going to be searching stuff. They're not going to have to click on stuff all the time unless they want to. So we're going to have these more interactive kind of pieces, right? I think this means, just like in the SEO conversations I've had, natural, question based verbiage is going to be so key. Whether it's captions, whether it's post writing, whether it's what goes with your reel, whether it's what you wrote out on your LinkedIn post, whether it's the description of your event page on Facebook, all these things. I think we want to talk like people. We want to be relatable to the audiences that we want to connect with. And we want to be thinking from their perspective. What are the most important FAQs? What are the quick tips we can provide? What are these things that they're going to need to maybe have access to on a regular basis? And that's depending on what industry you're in, there's so many different ways that can go. But it's like, how can we have those nuggets or those things that help them move through the process of staying a customer or becoming a customer? And so I think our website strategy and our social media strategy are going to need to get closer and closer in some ways, right? And we're going to have to merge them, and we're going to be thinking about how all long form becomes short form, right? And we're going to make sure that everything has a purpose around the person that we want to serve. We really want to just be keeping that in mind, that we have this sort of holistic unifying principle that we need to be implementing in 2026. Video, of course, still a winner, still huge. Short is good, right? So it's not that there's no purpose behind long videos like you'll receive after this webinar of me talking, but we are seeing a lot of studies that just show that short form content is getting more engagement, whether that's 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, depending on the platform. I do want to say part of the reason, and this is again, as a self-proclaimed smartphone and social media addict, short form video is also much more addictive. So in a lot of ways, it makes sense that we see that trend, right? And so there's pros and cons to this. This is why I think it's important for whatever content you're making on video to be very real and authentic and useful and entertaining, whatever it is that you want to gift your audience, right? So really just making sure that you don't like slack on the realness. Even if you're going to make AI stuff, we don't want to end up in that sort of AI slop pile, right? Like we really want to be somewhere in the realm of this is something somebody really connected to, related to, or wanted to keep watching, right? I think we're going to see that the DIY video stuff continues to move forward. So if you're doing your own video and you're starting to just get better and improve, high five, keep doing that. Using your phone, using your ring lights, having different tools where you can take one video and then repurpose it across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube Shorts. I think all that's going to be even more valuable. It's been valuable. I've been preaching that stuff for a while, but really, again, continuing to figure out how you maximize your content and you create really great content and then repurpose it or multiply it rather than creating all these different kinds of pieces of content, right? Really honing into what your customers, what your audiences need, what your visitors need. And again, I think you're going to see that the editing apps, the video apps that we use to create content, they're going to get better and better. They're already getting pretty stellar. I'm loving Canva's latest iteration. I'm doing a ton of reels on Canva. Generative AI content. So, yes, we're going to see more content. I will share really quick just so you can see. Let me see if I can pull up Meta AI, because they do have a very cool new system. So let me just see if I can pull that up for you. It's called Vibes, and Meta AI is definitely in my mind, just from a video perspective, and Google Gemini is also doing this. ChatGPT is also doing this. But I definitely think Meta and Google have done a big leap in the last like couple months. But if you go to Vibes, this is actually just a feed in their Meta AI of like different AI videos, what people are doing, right? And so if you're not familiar with just like the level that this stuff is going to, it's interesting to click around here, see what people are working on. You'll notice it includes the prompt, right? You can remix this stuff from here. You can comment, do all sorts of things. So we'll see in Meta AIs, just their AI, they've added a feed. So again, I see that this system and the Facebook feed, the Instagram feed, these things are going to continue to work together. This is, I think, a test for them to see how we feel about these things, right? So, generative AI content, people are loving it. It's super interesting. There's lots of different tools that are implementing how you can write prompts to generate video. I think I'm excited about it. I have a few personal creative projects I'm working on right now. But the funny thing is, pure AI content sees lower engagement. If it's not human edited, if it hasn't gotten some level of personalization, if there's not something in there that kind of makes the person connect your brand to what they're seeing, they might not engage, right? Because they're going to see it as just like, why are you creating this kind of random thing? So we still need to have good branding. We still need to have purpose. We still need to have our voice in the world, right? It's very important. Even though you can play with those visual tools, I don't think we're where we want to throw out our actual control over the visuals, especially as business folks. Micro communities and private groups are the fourth trend. So, again, in the world of specificity, where personalization is going to get even more and more intense, right? Because AI, I think, is going to allow us to create a lot more personalization across all these platforms going forward as new tools are launched. What we're seeing is that Facebook groups, Discord groups, WhatsApp groups, Signal groups, right? All of these different things where somebody engages with your brand, you connect with them around a specific issue, problem, solution, story, and then you create something for them to engage with that's more private. We're seeing that continue to be a strong push. Now, you need to develop that relationship with your audiences. People aren't going to do it unless you've already built a strong relationship with them through social media. But this is also where we see influencers having impact. So when you hire influencers, work with influencers, they usually have a certain trust level. There's a lot of power in working with an influencer over time, building things around a specific niche, and then building a place for that group to really engage, or maybe having the influencer do it. So you all can talk about how you would combine forces. But leveraging kind of these small special interest groups is something that we've seen grow all year long. This is things like behind the scenes, early access, exclusive tips, whatever it is. We've seen this in Facebook groups before, but this is expanding beyond that. And then the last trend is in e-commerce. So if you have an e-commerce site, if you are doing online shopping as part of your business, then really continuing to follow exactly what's going on in the social platforms and how they're promoting products is going to be very key. So if you have never explored how to connect in with an Instagram shop, a TikTok shop, all of that, if you don't have a website that has those capabilities, then you're going to really want to work on that. Hey, Terry, thanks for being here. Have a great day. So just again, if you're in the e-commerce world, you have a little bit extra work to do because I think there's going to be a whole open up awesome world of AI that happens in the future where everything from tagging products to building websites to managing e-commerce websites is going to become easier. And yeah, and Lisha, I saw your comment just about our earlier conversation. Definitely reach out to me personally and we'll make sure we talk about your Facebook issues. And then I see one comment here, and please add any other questions to the Q&A or to the chat. But how would you recommend navigating the distaste for social media and AI with company board leaders who believe they're not beneficial, driven by personal bias, ultimately leading them to not allow anything trendy for the business? No TikTok, no fast-paced video transitions with music. It's creatively stifling at times and making my position much more challenging. There's no real risk taking to prove how efficient these trends can be while still remaining professional and on brand. So this is a great question because I mentioned rapid prototype thinking, which is, I think, a mindset that we have to develop when it comes to digital marketing at large now. And what that means, I've been teaching that for over 10 years. My first introduction to that was 2013. What basically that rapid prototype thinking means is in order to understand our audiences, we have to test out lots of different content, look at how they respond to content, and then adjust our content plans going forward to match where they are. We need to be doing this, in my opinion, on a monthly basis or at least a quarterly basis because people's behavior will change very quickly depending on what's happening in the world around them. And so I think one of the things you can do with your board or your leadership is help them understand it from that perspective, right? This isn't a thing where we just want to be trendy. We're not suggesting that we try these things out because we just want to do what other people are doing, or we want to keep up with the Joneses, or we want to dilute our brand, right? Really, what we want to do is if we want to see engagement go up, and through engagement going up, we want to see reach go up. And through reach and engagement going up, we get to see conversion of some kind, sales and leads, website traffic going up. Then what we really want to do is have deeper relationships with the audience. And that deeper relationship with the audience comes from listening. And sometimes when we're having those conversations, if we don't see engagement happening, then we need to try a different medium, or we need to try a different message, or we need to try a different approach. So just like any other relationship, we have to adjust the communication. So I know that's a short answer for a big question. I hope that's helpful though, because I think that's the way I've helped some people to unlock kind of their understanding of what I'm suggesting, that we're not just trying to be trendy. We're not just trying to do what other people are doing. We're actually trying to understand our people better so we can serve them better. And that service is elevated when we're listening. And part of that listening is the conversation of our content creation and diversifying that stuff and not being afraid to try new things and then decide it wasn't a good fit or it was. So again, I know we're right at the top of the hour. We've got 1 minute. Nicole, I so love that you just said that. Thank you. That's welcome to my little soapbox for a second. But yeah, no, being trendy that's not what we're talking about, right? Like we're talking about listening. We're talking about understanding the audiences. Sometimes the trendy thing isn't what works, and sometimes it is. That's not really the question. The question is, what do your people want? Why do they want it? What do they need? Are you providing what they need? If you can't see in the data that you're providing what they need, then try something else. And the other thing too, the other just suggestion I'll give is sometimes having data is better than presenting an opinion, because presenting an opinion means everybody can have an opinion. And I think that's where a lot of times with nonprofit boards that were resistant to taking new avenues, I really came in with data of some kind, usually from their own analytics, to say, this is where we're having a problem we want to solve. This is why I want to solve the problem this way. So that made it a little bit more tangible, easier to understand than me just saying, hey, this is what I think we should do, or the marketing director saying that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Molly. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Terry, for that feedback. Everyone, again, thanks for spontaneously joining me on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving to talk about one of the things I'm most nerdy about. I will share not only the slide deck, but the recording. I'll also share a little outline of what we discussed about the trends, so you can keep those things and just keep looking back at them as you start the new year. Keep an eye out for some additional webinars before the end of the year. I know I'm going to do another spontaneous one in mid-December, and I haven't decided on that topic. So if you hear from me, you have my email, feel free to send me back an idea if you have a topic you've discussed, and I will throw it into the mix when I talk to my team. But again, I really appreciate everyone being here. I just want to say I've been doing these webinars every month since 2015. It is absolutely my pleasure to come and talk to everyone. And in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I just want to say how grateful and appreciative I am that all of you are in my network and that you keep showing up to learn with me. So have a great rest of your week, and I will be in touch soon. And I look forward to seeing you at another Learn Tourism Talks webinar in the future. Have a great holiday.